It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Imagine opening your work calendar one morning and finding a meeting simply gone, deleted. And the meeting that vanished was about the safety of the water millions of people drink. That's what happened to my guest, Elin Warn Betanzo. She's a Michigan drinking water engineer. She's also one of the people who helped uncover the Flint water crisis. More recently, she sat on a small federal panel that advises the government on drinking water. Then, she signed her name to a public letter alongside hundreds of other current and former employees. The letter said the Environmental Protection Agency was walking away from its mission to protect us. 2 days later, the agency suspended her from that panel. She's now suing to get her seat back. And her case raises a bigger question, one that reaches all the way to your kitchen sink. What happens to the rest of us when the government tells its own scientists to stay quiet? Elin, welcome to the Metro.
Thanks for having me.
I want you to take me to that morning, if you would. You sign a letter, you go on with your week, and then the meeting on your calendar disappears. What was that meeting supposed to be about?
Well, there was an emergency meeting of the National Drinking Water Advisory Council that was scheduled for last July of 2025, and this was to discuss the per- and polyfluoroalkyl substance regulation, PFAS, as we normally call them when we're talking about them. And the Trump administration wanted to hold this meeting to walk back some of the regulations that had been finalized under the Biden administration.
Okay, so these are man-made chemicals, the kind people call forever chemicals. They show up in tap water, they build up in our bodies, and they're linked to cancer. The government had finally set its first real limit on them. And that's the meeting they removed you from. Is that right?
Yes.
How did it land with you personally to be erased from that room?
Well, it was very surprising when I got the email saying that I was suspended from the National Drinking Water Advisory Council. I didn't even really make the connection immediately. They said I was suspended for my signature on a petition, and when I signed that petition, I wasn't thinking of myself as an employee of the government. I was thinking of myself as a regular person, a former EPA employee who wanted to hold the EPA to its mission, because I worked there to protect human health and the environment, and I wanted to speak up because I know that they are walking these back. So when they took me off, it was a shock. It was a surprise. I just didn't expect it to happen for a federal advisory committee.
You weren't thinking about the impacts. You weren't thinking there would be impacts in this way.
Right, because we have the First Amendment. We are allowed to criticize the government. That's one of our protected rights in the Constitution. And I was just standing up for what I thought was important.
I do want to get into that in a moment, how this could potentially have a chilling effect and what it means when scientists are not able to exercise their First Amendment rights. But first, you told me something that stuck with me. You signed the letter because you had a freedom that your old colleagues didn't have. What did you mean by that?
Well, people were circulating this petition, and it was shared with me, and they were saying that all the current EPA employees don't feel comfortable sharing their names because they're worried about retaliation. And I looked at that and I said, well, I agree with all of these items in this petition. I am very concerned that the EPA is ignoring scientific consensus and that they are dismantling the Office of Research and Development. That's critical for drinking water. We really need that office. And so I looked at it and I said, well, I can put my name on it. I think it's more powerful when we can put our names to it, and those who are able to and don't have to worry about losing our jobs and our health insurance, it's important to speak up. So I put my name on that petition.
And even this freedom that you thought that you had to do this is now in question. I wonder if you can make this a little bit more tangible for folks. I mean, you mentioned that in this petition, there were condemnations about dismantling the research and development office. What does this mean for me when I am turning on my tap water? What were some of the things that were really raising your concerns that were included in this petition?
Well, right now, a lot of the work that EPA is doing is ignoring scientific consensus to support the administration priorities. The administration is setting a priority. They're saying, do this, and who cares what the science says? And that's not how science works. The science is going to science, and we're going to have public health impacts. So we can ignore that, but the American public is going to suffer from that. We need to have accurate data about our water quality. We need to control it. But if we ignore the science and just say we have a policy, we want to support this company, we want to support this outcome, the public is not going to be protected.
Science is going to science. We're going to use that one. I'm wondering, when you think about colleagues, when you think about people who don't have the kind of freedom that you thought you had to sign this letter, is there a lot of fear in that so-called building, in the EPA, among the people who are trying to hold on to the science and trying to keep the science central to the work and the mission of the EPA?
Right. I think it's absolutely a delicate balance for the people who are still there. There are a lot of people who have left the agency. Some have been fired. Some have, chosen to move on. I was just at a conference and I saw a lot of folks who were formerly with the Office of Research and Development, and now they're at other places. So those who are left are feeling the responsibility of, carrying all that weight, doing multiple jobs that they were never supposed to do. They used to have all this additional support while constantly maintaining this balance. So one, they're overworked, they're overstressed, but they want to follow the science, but they're still there because they need the income. I mean, we all need some income to survive. So it's definitely, every day is a calculation. Where can I push and where can I pull back?
I'm wondering what some of the conversations sounded like between you and former colleagues and some of the people that you were talking to at this recent conference. I mean, is it a lot of like, oh, geez, a lot of concern, a lot of solidarity, a lot of worry?
EPA has a great Office of Research and Development, some really specialized drinking water labs where they were doing some applied research. They were finally getting to do some extra work on lead corrosion control and PFAS research that they'd been having some funding limitations. So they had been kind of in this ramp up phase and then just got cut off. And so it's really sad to see that. And so now the science decision making, where the ORD, Office of Research and Development, had been mostly independent, a lot of those scientific decisions are being made in the office with more political influence rather than the independent science office.
Okay, we've been thinking a little bit about how tough it is for some of your colleagues right now and your contemporaries. I want to think about you specifically and the role that you had on this panel, which is a small group of outside experts whose job is to tell the government when its water rules aren't good enough. Is that right?
Yes.
So here's what strikes me, Elin. You sat in the seat usually saved for the regular water drinker, the neighbor, but you're also the engineer who can analyze every number. Mm-hmm. Is that unique?
Yes. So the National Drinking Water Advisory Council was created in the Safe Drinking Water Act over 50 years ago. And there's a required consultation with this council every time there's a new drinking water regulation, either made or revised. And it's got a balanced membership between state regulators, industry, and community members. So usually the community member position is NGO. A lot of times we have drinking water advocates, but I'm more technical than your average drinking water advocate. I assist water utilities complying with the Safe Drinking Water Act, and then I also help communities understand how the Safe Drinking Water Act impacts them. So I have all the industry side. I also have my EPA experience, so I can dig into every technical conversation that they're having there and really provide input on how the regulations are currently being implemented and how it impacts actual humans, because that often doesn't come into the conversation.
Okay, so you're bringing in not just the data, you're bringing in a very human element. And so you see this as a big loss to not be on this panel. I mean, your legal team, they went looking. As far as anyone can tell, has the Environmental Protection Agency ever done this before, removed someone purely for something they said?
We couldn't find any example of it, and I've been, talking to my colleagues who I've been working with. I remember when I first started working in the EPA Office of Groundwater and Drinking Water, I was attending meetings of the National Drinking Water Advisory Council because they were discussing the rules I was working on. And I remember, that's when I met some of these folks. And for example, like Eric Olson with the Natural Resources Defense Council, he was on there back in 2002. And I was watching him participate. And I was like, I want to be like him one day. I want to have that voice on that council. I want to be able to share my expertise and make better drinking water regulations. And so, I went to him. I was like, you were back in 2002. Can you remember? Can you think back? And we went to a bunch of our other colleagues, Cindy Roper as well. And we just couldn't find any other example. Maybe somebody left because of health reasons, or, they had a job change and, it was no longer the right fit for them. But we couldn't come up with any example of any individual who had been fired from the council because of what they had said about the EPA.
I contacted the EPA about your claim that your removal was retaliation for protected speech. It said it doesn't comment on pending litigation. That is a long-standing policy. But the agency has said publicly it has zero tolerance for employees working against its agenda. What's your answer to that?
Well, I think the EPA's agenda should be to protect human health and the environment, and it shouldn't be on arbitrarily selected priorities. So I know my EPA colleagues, the people I worked with when I was there and the people who work there now, went there to meet that mission to protect human health and the environment. And that's what they signed up to do, and that's what they're expecting to do. And it's really a loss for everyone when they are told that they cannot protect human health and the environment. That this is something that should concern all Americans all the time.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. If you're just joining us, my guest is Elin Warn Betanzo, a Michigan drinking water engineer who helped expose the Flint water crisis. She signed a letter recently saying the Environmental Protection Agency was abandoning its mission. 2 days later, she was removed from a federal panel that advises the country on safe drinking water. She's suing to get it back. We're asking a bigger question, too. What happens when the government tells its own scientists to stay quiet? Now, Elin, I want to go back, if we could, more than 10 years to Flint. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you could take me to the moment you first suspected the water was poisoning kids. Where were you? What did you see in the numbers that made your stomach drop?
Well, the first time I was worried about it was when I was at was at a drinking water training event in April of 2014, and somebody was giving a presentation and said they were switching the source of the Flint water system from Lake Huron, from the Detroit water system, to the Flint River. And I thought back to the DC lead crisis where they made a water treatment change, and I said, oh boy, I really hope they've studied this well and implemented the proper corrosion control, because this could not end well. And so from the moment that I learned that they were switching their water source, I followed it very closely. But it was really, from that day, April 2014, there were drinking water violations. 6 months later, the public meetings in brown water. But it was when my former colleague, Miguel del Toro, wrote an internal memo describing his visit to Flint, where he found there was no corrosion control in Flint, that there were extremely high lead levels at a house where he did investigative sampling. And that's when I knew that my worst fears had come true.
What did it take to be one of the few people in the room saying the water isn't safe when no one wanted to hear it?
Gaslighting is the word that comes to mind. I feel like, seeing the data, seeing the lead in the water, reading Miguel's memo. Then there was a community sampling effort where there was elevated lead found at house after house after house, very high above the lead action level. And that's when we should address lead in drinking water. We don't wait till we find it in humans. But I just kept seeing this pushback. The water is fine. There's nothing to see here. Nobody is getting harmed here. So when I was able to encourage my friend, Dr. Mona Hanna, to use she had access to health records at the hospital where she worked. She was able to do an analysis to prove that the children in Flint were being harmed and that there was lead in their blood from the drinking water. And that's what changed the whole conversation there. But the gaslighting, what you see here in the lead isn't real. It's not really affecting anybody. It's infuriating to see it there, and we see similar things now. What you see isn't really what's happening, but the health effects are there.
I'm thinking about Flint because it took outsiders like you, like pediatrician Dr. Mona Hanna, shouting until someone listened. And I'm seeing a parallel here. I mean, if the government is now teaching its own scientists to stay quiet, who's left to shout? Where's the next Flint that nobody catches in time?
I think it's a big concern. I strongly believe that we need our civil servants to protect our drinking water. The Safe Drinking Water Act has a whole set of requirements and data systems. They get reports. They're the ones that have the information to be able to see what's going wrong. They're having these conversations. But when it's not politically convenient to talk about water contamination, they get told to be quiet. And so we need them to be able to push back. We need them in these roles. We need them to be able to act on their expertise, because if they're not, all of us are losing. All of our health is at risk. Our drinking water is at risk.
And I want to bring this home to the tap here in Michigan. I mean, you told me Michigan earns a flat F, a failing grade when it comes to letting people see whether our own water is safe. And you spend a lot of time filing public records requests, asking for data that should be public. What are you trying to find out that they won't just show you?
Well, so the Safe Drinking Water Act has like a set schedule of sampling that water systems need to do. And so especially after Flint, we hear from the water systems the water is safe. I like data to back that up. So I want to see the data. I want to see the evidence. We don't have a place where people in Michigan can just go to a website and say, what did my water utility measure last week? Other states do. And so Michigan is in the minority of not having ready access to this type of information. Illinois does, Indiana, New York. We've got a lot of different states out there where if you want to know what did your water utility measure in their water last week, you can go on their website and you can get the actual results. Here we have to submit Freedom of Information Act requests.
So that needs to change is what you're saying, but also we're relying on folks like you who are immersed, who are swimming in this kind of data and understand it to access it so you can tell us about it as well. So you can work with people like reporters, people in the media, for example, to explain why a drinking water, a number is a concern.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Elin Warn Betanzo is a drinking water engineer and the founder of Safe Water Engineering. She's suing the Environmental Protection Agency to win back her seat on the federal panel that advises the country on drinking water. Elin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's the Metro on WDET. Coming up, extreme weather events like the heat wave we're bracing for this week are getting more intense and more frequent as a result of climate change. A key driver of global warming is fossil fuel emissions. Whose responsibility is it to combat climate change? People or corporations? Industry? We'll hear about the nefarious origins of the carbon footprint myth next. Stay with us.